even after 6 years,
Right.
we are almost at the
Right.
brink of 6 year
Right.
completion.
Right.
All these issues have not
Right.
settled.
Right. A very warm welcome to all of you. I am Shivam Kamra, NITYA Tax Associates. And after receiving a great response from our webinars and roundup series, we are glad to start with our new podcast series, of which we are recording the first episode today. So, without any further ado, the topic for today's first episode would be all about litigation under the indirect taxes. And to talk about it, we are glad to have Mr. Dharnendra Rana, partner, NITYA Tax Associates. Very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you, Shivam. Thanks for having me.
So, Mr. Rana, having a rich experience of more than 25 years in handling tax litigation for forums, high courts, and tribunals all across the country, and being a part of eminent firms like NITYA, BMR Legal, Advaita Legal. Sir, can you just apprise our viewers of the various key areas and aspects of litigation under the indirect taxes?
Certainly, certainly. See, this litigation is very close to my heart. Okay, all my life I have done it. So, very happy to be here. Now, coming to your question, uh, you can just divide it into two parts. You see, because 2017 we saw a big amendment, of landmark with the advent of GST, the goods and services tax. The entire landscape under indirect tax went into a change. So prior to GST, we had customs which was applicable on import of goods into India. That continues even after GST. That continues to be same. There's no change.
Right.
But we had central excise duty, which was leviable. The taxable event there was manufacturing. Okay. We had service tax, which was imposed on provision or receipt of services. And we had lastly, VAT or sales tax, which was on sale of goods. And states used to levy it, whereas the service tax and central excise and customs, these are administered by the union or the central government. So there were other small taxes like entry tax, etc. I'm not going into that, but what I'm trying to, the point I'm making is that prior to 2017, prior to GST, you had these bunch of taxes,
Right.
and the taxable event in each of them were very different.
Right.
When GST came, while customs remained same, as I said, more than 17 enactments got subsumed. Okay, so central excise, service tax, VAT, entry tax, all of them got subsumed into GST, and the taxable event changed. Now the taxable event is supply. So supply of goods, services of both, they are exigible to GST. So this is a big change that has happened.
Right. So, sir, just a connected question to it, because many of our viewers, they have this conundrum that how is litigation under indirect taxes is different from the usual civil or criminal litigation they often see, before various courts and forums.
Very good question, and I'm sure through my answer probably will help the viewers understand this. So, civil law, as we understand, uh, deals with litigation relating to property, succession, family disputes, multiple. They're multifarious,
Right.
and there is a procedural code, civil procedure code, which deals with it. Criminal law, on the other hand, is relating to crimes committed whether under, say, Indian Penal Code. The procedure is under Code of Criminal Procedure. There could be other small, like as small as check bouncing. Okay, that all that is criminal law. All right. Now coming to taxes, when we talk about tax, tax is a civil liability in general. Government's main revenue, okay, amongst other, there are various sources of revenue, but
Right.
main revenue is tax, whether direct tax or indirect tax. Government collects revenue, because how else will government do all the development work and all its administration? How will it
Right.
run? So it requires revenue. So tax is a revenue. Tax is a civil liability. The tax department, there are self-assessment regime, and then the assessment is done by the tax authorities. That is all civil. But
Right.
if you commit an offense, say smuggling under customs,
Right.
or any other offense which is defined under the law, GST also has criminal offenses, then the tax authorities, they file criminal complaint in the court,
Right.
and those are tried, the prosecution goes on. That is like a criminal. The procedure is criminal, but the punishment, etc., a magistrate court or a court will give, but that will be governed by the GST law there. Right. Okay. So if I were to tell you about the civil liability that is there, the main areas of litigation is taxability of your goods, services, or whatever, or a mixed thing. You have issues like valuation, you have issues like classification, you have issues like availability of exemption, whether it is available or not, and lastly, and I'm talking, these are the main key areas, like the credits, which plays the important role, because all these are consumption based taxes. Indirect tax is a consumption based tax, so you pass on the credit. There is a supply chain. In the supply chain, the credits pass. So the availability of credits is another. Totally. So that's how you link with civil and criminal law, and what is the difference. I hope I've been able to
No,
clarify.
absolutely, absolutely. Even I feel that our viewers, they could get great value from this. So, Mr. Rana, as you mentioned earlier, that in 2017, the whole indirect tax system of in India, it went, complete change with the introduction and advent of goods and services tax. So, in your view, because you've been in tax litigation and you've seen this paradigm shift and this period all throughout, so in your view, how has introduction of GST especially impacted the indirect tax litigation post 2017?
Okay. So again, I'll just give some touch to what was the regime prior to 2017. I mean, we had Customs Act since 1878. C Customs Act was there. There was Land Customs Act. Then we had in 1962 the present Customs Act. Likewise, the Central Excise Act is 1944. So it's an old law. Even the service tax was through Finance Act 1994. So more than 2 decades, more than 20 years it saw, so it evolved. Similarly, VAT, sales tax was always there. So these were all matured laws. The issues there were more or less settled by Supreme Court, by different, the interpretation issues, more or less, I'm saying, not absolutely. There were litigations, yes, but quite a few of the issues got settled. All right. When we come to GST, one, as I said, the taxable event underwent a complete change. The law was new. There was nothing which can be said as a precursor to it. Okay, so nothing prior to it. So when there is nothing and you have a new law which was never tried or tested, obviously there will be teething problems, there will be interpretational issues. Then the taxable event has changed to supply, issues around that. Also, earlier, the old laws were either the central government or the parliament would enact, and central government would or their department would administer them, or they were state specific. States would have the power, they will do it. GST, on the other hand, if you see, more than 30 people coming together, having a single mind, very, very difficult. All right. So there is a central government, all the states and union territories having participation. So the GST council, the kind of meetings that they held and number of meetings. So with GST, what you'll also see is, never ever we have had so many amendments, so many notifications, etc., so many retrospective amendments. So the moment GST was enacted, we saw floodgate open, and there were constitutional challenges. All across the country. There were transitional issues. There were issues where there was no certainty. So there was a flood of advance rulings. And they were contrary advance ruling, because you have advance ruling authority, not one. Each state would have its own. And one state is passing one order, another state another order. You go in appellate authority of advance ruling also passing orders like this. So even after 6 years, we are almost at the brink of 6 year completion. All these issues have not settled. They're there, and therefore the litigation is just multiplying. It's just going up and up and up. Yeah.
So, Mr. Rana, like you mentioned, I mean, absolutely, we are on the brink of completing 6 years of GST now. And it's a fact that even after almost completing 6 years, there is absolutely no certainty of cropping up of appellate tribunals under GST. I mean, time and again, there are news, that GST Council is thinking over it, but the reality is that there is still no appellate tribunal. So, in your, candid view, do you think that once these appellate tribunals they start to be constituted in one state or the other, do you think that would they be able to subdue or control the GST litigation, or they can put it to rest, or will it lead to another stark rise in the litigation under GST?
Uh, this topic again, GST appellate tribunal has been in dispute for a very, very long time.
Right.
Initially, the provisions as they were there in the law, section 112, 109, 110, etc. So those provisions were challenged, okay, because they were against the constitutional mandate or against various jurisprudence settled by the Supreme Court, all right, in R. Gandhi and others. So therefore, in the recent union budget, the legislature changed those provisions completely. They overhauled everything, saying that okay, now let us try to be, I'm saying, uh, be compliant with the Supreme Court guidelines and the whatever constitutional mandate is. So they changed, they amended the provisions, replaced it completely. Having said that, even the new provisions are under challenge before the Supreme Court at
All
present.
right.
Now, already as we said that we are close to 6 years.
Yeah.
When will Supreme Court settle it? When will it get decided? When will GST appellate tribunal see the day light of the day? Is anybody's guess. Maybe
Right.
2 years, maybe 3 years. We don't know.
Right.
Number one. Number two, assume for a minute that yes, we actually in fact have a GST tribunal, and across all states we have tribunals in place, okay,
Right.
with all the infrastructure, everything.
Right.
Then there are thousands of appeals that will get filed because they have been pending for over these years, okay,
Right.
after the first appellate. Now, the if you will appreciate that, unlike erstwhile regime where a high stake matter would be adjudicated directly by a commissioner and the appeal will go straight to tribunal, okay, here what is happening in GST, irrespective of the stakes involved, the first level adjudication happens by assistant or a deputy commissioner, or maybe at best a joint commissioner, additional commissioner,
Right.
not beyond that.
Right. Right.
So the first appeal is also by department officer, in most cases joint commissioner appeal or a additional commissioner appeal. So they being officers of the revenue, all their cases are pro revenue,
Right.
fact based. The law point legal issues are not looked into because they do not wish to, or they don't want to apply the law as such. So when the GST appellate tribunal, these matters will go. So on facts, of course, they'll get settled because
Right.
that will be the final fact finding authority.
Right.
But insofar as law points are concerned, whatever decisions will come, because they will have widespread ramifications across India,
Right.
I'm sure that either the revenue authorities, tax department,
Right.
or the SSE, whosoever is aggrieved, will further go on legal issues before the high courts and Supreme Court.
Right.
So settling of the issues, I still feel there is long way,
Right.
maybe 5 years, 10 years before we see that yes, certain issues have started settling down.
Right.
So that's my apprehension, and there is a clear, we can see that happening. Yes.
Right. Absolutely, Mr. Rana. So, Mr. Rana, as it needs no introduction that in the past, 1 or 2 years, our country, and in fact, for that matter, the whole world, it went through some unprecedented times, like the outbreak of COVID-19. But I personally feel that somewhere this COVID-19 has a silver lining on the litigation front, in the sense that due to this COVID, all the courts and various litigations, they started to get a little inclined towards use of technology. So I just wanted to know your views on how much technology has helped, or how important is technology, be it through the medium of Zoom meetings or be it through virtual hearings. Has it aided or has it bolstered litigation front under indirect taxes or litigation as general in India?
So again, I will say it's a blessing in disguise sometimes. Well, I don't, what we all went through
Right,
in the
absolutely.
COVID-19,
Absolutely.
nobody says that it was good.
Right.
But then the flip side of it, prior to COVID-19, hardly any court was functioning on e-mode or, the e-filing, etc. Okay. They were no, there was no infrastructure to say that.
Absolutely.
Okay, at least uh, I mean, e-filing was there in say Delhi High Court or some of the high courts, very limited few
Right.
high courts. Supreme Court also some e-filing was happening, but predominantly it was physical filing.
Right.
Okay, the tribunals etc. not heard of, and hearing through virtual mode, absolutely none, absolutely none.
All right.
Rather, the courts had that tendency of in camera or some kind of like closed door within
Right.
the that kind of tendency.
Right.
But what happened? So I'll start from the legislature first. Okay, so customs, we had the EDI system. Okay, where the shipping bill etc. some documentation is done through. There's a customs portal,
Right.
IceGate, through which you do the documentation. Likewise, you have GST law. The entire all other laws had only the return filing etc. online.
Right.
But beyond that, nothing. If you have to interact with the department, nothing. Income tax still had some faceless and this and
Right.
that various aspects. But in indirect tax, GST law, well, GST law said that everything will be through common portal.
Right.
Okay, you file your appeal, a refund claim, whatever, everything should be through common portal. But having said that, the officer would always ask you for a hard copy, physical copy.
Right.
So that common portal was just for name. It was not in practical functionality, or maybe there were technical glitches there.
Right.
Now, with COVID-19, because there was no movement, what happened is the high courts and the Supreme Court were the first to implement and adapt themselves to the virtual court hearings and all
Right.
those.
Right.
Same way, gradually, the lower courts, the tribunals, they also adapted themselves.
Right.
They also created that infrastructure.
Right.
Now, there are advantages and advantages of that. Number one, you see, the administration of justice requires transparency.
Right.
This process of virtual hearing actually gives transparency because everybody is able to view and see
Totally.
and everything.
Totally.
Okay. Number two, it reduced the paper. It reduced completely the bulky files and books and everything. Okay. Some earlier it used to so happen. I might have cited 10 judgments. The court has not taken cognizance of it.
Right. Right.
Now everything is filed electronically. Everything is on record. So the carbon footprint has gone down.
Right.
Third and most critical and important, I am sitting here in Delhi NCR and I am doing matters across India without
Right.
having to travel.
Right. Right.
Okay. Earlier it was a dream. This is
Absolutely.
like a dream come true.
Right.
Fourth and last point, which is the case with especially because it has your cost of doing this profession has come
Right.
down,
Right.
and especially with young lawyers, because we are addressing young lawyers today. They might have this fear factor when they appear before a court, a
Right.
high court judge or a
Right.
Supreme Court or
Right.
some. But when you are virtually doing something, you are
Right.
in your own environment sitting,
Mm-hmm.
that fear is not there.
Right.
So that will give them that extra boost. Okay, so to my mind, this COVID-19 has actually
Mm-hmm.
helped in a big way. Supreme Court has now passed a ruling very recently,
Right.
okay, where they've said that all tribunals necessarily have to go electronic, and all
Right.
filings has to be electronic. There will be no paper use of
Right.
paper. So I think
Right.
it's a great move.
Yeah,
Great
and
initiative.
even I the other day I was reading that even the Chief Justice of India,
Yes.
Mr. D.Y. Chandrachud, he also uh, requested, in fact, all the high courts, all the
Yes.
chief justices of all the high courts across the country to even encourage
Yeah.
and make virtual hearings happen even beyond the unprecedented time of COVID-19.
Absolutely.
So to make it a practice, to make it a very technology-driven process of litigation. So, Mr. Rana, speaking of, like you just mentioned, that GST is a technology driven law. Everything on GST, all the taxpayers, all the businessmen, everyone has their own functionality on GST portal. And right from the beginning, that, they have to file returns and they have to face litigation. They even receive notices and orders on the GST portal. So, just wanted to, have your views that has this GST portal or having this GST portal in between the taxpayer and the department, has it added to a little pressure on you being a lawyer, or has it actually eased the process of maybe filing appeals or replies for that matter?
So I would say that it's a boon as well as a bane. Okay, for the very simple reason. See, if you are tech savvy, okay, technology savvy,
Right,
it's easy to use the technology, use the portal, file it.
right,
But then there are people, professionals who are not so technology savvy.
right,
The old generation, the conventional way of doing business or
right,
doing profession,
right,
they find it very, very difficult. Some of them have become complete redundant today.
right.
Secondly, with technology also comes, whenever there are technical
Hmm.
issues in the portal, and we have
Hmm.
had long history, there have been litigation right up to Supreme Court on technological issues itself,
Right, right,
that the portal is, because it is, they never while GST network
right,
had engaged Infosys to
right,
develop the portal,
right.
but the kind of uh, uh, business or the kind of people that
Hmm.
the base, the tax base is so large, and so
Hmm.
many taxpayers or assessees, when they
Hmm.
are logging in and putting their data, it becomes very difficult. Just last week, I'll tell you, an advisory has come from GST network
Right.
to taxpayers to avoid filing returns on last day because there's too much of rush. And then when people are uploading their
Hmm.
invoices,
Hmm.
somebody uploaded 27 lakh invoices in one return. Now that the bandwidth of their GST network goes down, and they completely, and then there is a big queue, and those
Hmm.
return filers, they feel the, oh, the network is stuck, it's jam,
Right.
it's not working. So with technology comes all these issues.
Right. Right.
So I think somewhere one has to
Hmm.
deal with it. But having said that, uh, there are more advantages because it results into transparency. It avoids dealing with the officers one to one. It saves your time and energy in commuting or anything,
Right.
or paperwork.
Right.
So all that gets completely fizzled down, and
Right.
therefore I would prefer that there are more advantages than disadvantages in my
Right.
view. Yeah.
Right. Very well put, Mr. Rana. So, Mr. Rana, moving on to the one of the key aspects of this episode, because I personally assume that most of our viewers watching this podcast, these are young professionals, young chartered accountants, freshly graduated, or maybe they are articles. Likewise, young lawyers who have freshly graduated, or they are even law students right now, as of now. So they might be eager to know, because I mean, you being an eminent figure in this field of tax litigation, indirect taxes, so they would be eager to know that what is the scope of GST or indirect taxes after 2017 or now, because they might be in their penultimate year of their law school or just graduated, so they might be having, what is it that they might be having to incline towards this field. I mean, they should have something to look forward to. So
Right.
just wanted to gather your views on it. How can it be beneficial to them?
Very, very good question, because this relates directly to their future.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
So I would say that whenever there is a new law, okay, it opens new opportunities.
Right,
Okay. So when GST came, no matter, I mean, I might be having 25 year plus experience, whatever, but for insofar as GST law is concerned,
right,
I'm equally at equal footing with somebody who is a new professional, or I'm there. Yes, some experience does play some role, but having said that, the law is new, and therefore, the young lawyers or young professionals have full scope. Secondly, also what is important is that tax law helps you understand the transactions. Okay, indirect taxes are, you have to understand the transaction, the entire supply chain, how it is helping and how it applies.
right,
So it gives you a very good insight over the business, okay, in general. So the professionals, the young professionals who are keen in pursuing any career in legal profession, they must look into this, that it has the scope for advisory, it has scope for compliances, it has a scope for litigation. All right. So now, even if you're not doing compliance, you're doing advisory or litigation, your knowledge, you can hone your skills because as I said, a big chunk of government revenue comes from indirect taxes. We
Right.
saw recently
Right.
1,86,000 crore rupees of revenue in one single month.
Right.
Okay, just April 2023.
Right.
Yes. So that's the kind of revenue that gets generated to government because
Right.
of this tax. So now for young lawyers, they are always welcome. But if they decide to pursue this field,
Right.
my advice to or my recommendation to them is
Right.
that even their articleship or internship, they
Right.
should target to do in firms dealing with indirect taxes. They should start reading the articles. There are so many, now the internet is full of information. There's so many videos, podcasts, webinars that are freely available for on this subject. So they should look into that, prepare themselves upfront, and make up their mind. And then, when they with focused approach, if they will do it, then success is given,
Right.
and sky is the limit. So I welcome them, and
Right.
they're most welcome to
And
join the profession.
absolutely, even I feel that, it's just been 6 years, and the amount of litigation that we have seen, sprouting up, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Like you mentioned that, the GST Appellate Tribunal, as and when it forms, many of the High Court cases would be sent back to those. And the litigation, I also feel that would be, gushing in the next decade or so. So you also, I think, reckon that second, there's this my thought that, it would be a great opportunity, though GST and indirect tax is a technical field, yet it's an upcoming field for these young professionals.
Right.
And I think they can, get the benefit out of it by doing various internships, reading articles, and like you mentioned, there are transparent hearings and, all the online hearings.
Absolutely.
So yes, even I, second your thought. So it was a pleasure having you, Mr. Rana. And I strongly feel that all of our viewers could add some great knowledge and some great thoughts and insights from our podcast, and so that they can frame their mind and wrap around their head around this field. And thank you so much, everyone, for watching this podcast. And stay tuned for more podcasts by NITYA Tax Associates.